So if you have the basics of Photoshop kind of figured out, like how to generally move things around and save and all that kind of stuff, you're going to want to start moving into this next project, which might be there's a lot of different ways to do animation. This is just a couple of simple ways that you can start working on Photoshop animations. And it's a really simple way to kind of draw right in the interface, and it's a great kind of example of what you can do. So to begin with, you want to start with the right file size. So you want to pick out what you need. So I would just go to File, New, and we're going to want to pick a new, again, a new sort of window that we're going to work in. And so, I mean, for video, usually this HD 1920 by 1080p is a good example. So let's just go for that and click create. So if you do that, you're going to get, again, a square here with a background, and you may or may not see this timeline down here. And so if you don't see it, like if you go, if your image looks like this, if your screen looks like that, just go up here to Window and go to Timeline, and that'll like put the timeline down here in the bottom. And then the thing I usually do too, just because you don't really need it, is to go up here to View and then go to Guides, and then we're just going to clear the guides because you don't really need that for this. So to just do a really simple basic animation, frame by frame animation, so just draw an image and then draw the next image and draw the next image. The simplest way to do it is to do what we just did and then go up here to the layer, and you're going to want to go to the layer menu and scroll down, and you're going to go to video layers, and you just want like a new blank video layer. So you just want one that's all by itself, and click that, and you'll see that it gives you in your layers palette over here, it gives you a new layer with this kind of like film stop kind of looking icon in the bottom, and then you have a background layer. So the background layer is just going to be like the white layer that's there all the time. You could of course change this or put something else in the background if you wanted to, but that layer kind of gives you that white piece of paper background kind of feeling. And then here you have a video layer, right, which is kind of works on a playhead with a scrubber kind of, you move this thing back and forth on the timeline. But what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to actually change a few parameters before you get started, because this is going to be by default, if you look down here, it's set up to be around 30 frames a second, which if you do the math on that, like 2 seconds of animation would be 60 drawings, which is kind of a lot. So most of the time people will run their animations at a lower frame rate, if that makes sense. Like in the old days, film was 24 frames a second generally, so your animations would be set up to be like 12 frames, or I'm sorry, 24 frames a second, but sometimes they would do what's called doubling, where they would kind of photograph the same frame twice to kind of make the work go faster, right? And so if you ever look at really old cartoons like Looney Tunes, those are 24 frames a second, pretty well crafted. If you look at other ones like Scooby-Doo, those are often doubled a lot, and they're a little more kind of herky-jerky, if that makes sense. So it's kind of up to you what kind of aesthetic you want to have. But again, for a beginner, I would just go over here to this thing I call the hamburger in the timeline palette and click on that, and we're going to want to go in here and we're going to want to change the timeline frame rate. So if you click on that, it's going to bring up, okay, your frame rate is 29 point, basically 30 frames a second, and so you could change that to 2, and it would be there'd be a lot of jumps between your animations, so it will look real herky-jerky. If you leave it at this, you're gonna have to draw a million frames. So I would probably just go like 15 frames a second, because it's about half. You could do 12 if you want. Again, it's kind of an aesthetic choice. But if you just click OK there, now you'll see your timeline just kind of got a little smaller, and you shouldn't have to draw quite as many frames, right? So again, to zoom in Adobe products, you'll have these little things, I call them the mountains. You have the small mountain that zooms your timeline out, and your big mountain that zooms it in. So I like to kind of zoom in pretty tight on this, because I'm going to be working like frame by frame, right? So from this jump to that one. So I want to kind of like be able to see it and see each frame. And so now if I start working in this, I can grab my paintbrush and I can, let's make a little squiggle. And then if I click this icon right here, it'll take me to the next frame. So, and And then, you know, I can draw another one, right? And then, oh, this is dumb. So I'm drawing on the background layer. Good example of what not to do, right? So, so if I turn that off, nothing is there. I am totally on the wrong layer. So that would be a problem. I want to go back. Good, do what I say, not what I do kind of a moment, right? So I'm going to grab that, and then now I'm going to try this again. So I'm going to draw a squiggle, click forward, and you can see I can draw another squiggle. Click forward, another squiggle, and click forward. And now that playhead will move itself through whenever I hit the play button, and you can see that the squiggles are kind of like, you know, they're just kind of, they're going to just sit there and kind of undulate, right, on the timeline. So what people usually want to do is they want to see the drawing they did before and then add on to it, right? And so, you know, what I would do here is I'd probably just, I would select these frames because I don't really like them, and I would grab the eraser tool, and I would just erase what I just did, like kind of get rid of it, and go back another frame, get rid of that one, and then one more. So you could also probably just hit select all and then hit delete, and that'll get rid of it. So then hit Command D, and that'll get rid of that selection. So now I don't have anything on the timeline, nothing's there anymore. If I go, so before I start my animation, I would go to the hamburger over here, click on it, and I would go down here to this thing called onion skin settings. So if I click on that, that's going to give me like, it'll show me kind of a grayed out version of what I've drawn before. So I could change it to, it'll show me the 2 frames before if I want to. Totally up to you how you set all that up. I would just probably stick with the 1 frame before right now. So now if I draw my squiggle, right, like this, and then I move forward, you see how it's giving me a grayed out kind of image there. Now I can kind of actually start, like, you know, changing things a little bit so that it looks, you know, a little bit more intentional. So now if I move forward another frame, it shows me the frame that I just drew. And, you know, I'm drawing with a mouse right now. You might probably want to draw with a tablet or something a little bit more sophisticated, right? But if I wanted it to make it look like this squiggle kind of is wiggling its way off of the screen, you know, I could do this. Keep going. Again, this is just a real corny, bad sort of example in some ways, but just keep going. Maybe just a little more here, like, okay. So now if I've done that, I can zoom this back, and then I can grab this little edge here, and it'll pull the sort of work area back to this beginning. And now if I hit the play button, it'll just loop that, and it'll just show me how it looks, right, as it goes. So and so that'll, you know, kind of give me a sense of like what my animation might look like if I, if I kind of finished it all off that way. So you can go kind of obviously make it look better than this. If I don't want to see the onion skins anymore because it's going to keep showing me that, I can just uncheck that box, and now when I push play, it's just gonna show me what the lines look like, right? So you can see how this works, the general gist of it. Again, like my background's got a little bit of a problem on it right now, which I could fix if I wanted to. I could add a different background, whatever I wanted to do. But that is the gist of how you would kind of like get your baseline like animation done, and you can just, you know, make this stretched out as long as you want. You can always add, you can also add more video layers. So if you wanted to come up to layer and go to video layers, and you're going to make a new blank video layer, you could put another layer on top of that. You can reorder them by sliding them around here in this timeline. But if I wanted to have this squiggle kind of look like it was interacting with something else, I could work up here on this one and make like a circle. I could change the color, right, by selecting a new color in my brush and, you know, painting that. This is like a masterpiece, really. Probably, you know, this will go in the MoMA someday, right? So, but there you go. So you can kind of see how this will kind of all start looking. But it's just, you know, if I wanted to, I could turn layer 2 off, and then I wouldn't see it anymore. If I turn it back on, then it'll be there. So just frame by frame animation of Photoshop. Really simple, really basic. We'll talk more about exporting your files out later, but for now, this is just the gist of how you might get started with doing simple, basic animation.